Hello and welcome back to the channel. Or if it's your first time, welcome to the channel. I had a different video planned for this month, but yesterday I posted a photo of a lighthouse I took about 2 weeks ago back in North Carolina. And as I was working on that, it took me a lot longer to make my adjustments than it normally would. And part of that has to do with I needed to make adjustments to the sky. And unlike all of the photos you see when people demonstrate the sky mask within Lightroom, this one had some additional complicating elements to it that made it difficult for Lightroom to figure out exactly what it was that it was trying to do. Or trying to select, I should say. I tried a bunch of different things, but finally came up with an approach that worked. And I thought this would be a good topic for a video. And what I'm going to do is just kind of walk you through this photo and what I did to not only select the sky, but also to really complete the other masks as well, since the sky also comes into play with the other masks. And hopefully, what you'll find is that this does help quite a bit to kind of get you that result that you're looking for when you run into these kinds of situations and you've got trees and other structures popping up into the sky area. So let's take a look at the photo. So when I took this photo, I really wanted to make sure I was protecting the highlights. And what you're seeing is the raw photo unedited in Lightroom. If we look at the histogram, we see there's a little bit of a gap on the right-hand side. Again, that was to protect the clouds. As you look at the clouds, especially towards the right-hand part of the image, you see that those are pretty bright. Now, that had the negative impact of having the foreground in that really dark, but I felt pretty confident that I could pull that back up. And we do see that there is a little bit of detail blocked out, but it's actually where I could live with it. Realistically, probably when I was looking at it, those are probably really dark, if not black to my eyes anyway. And kind of like a little bit of that in a lot of my landscape images. So I'm fine with that. So the histogram to me looks pretty good. Now I just have to make this look more like what my eyes saw when I was there. So making just some global adjustments and not going to go through the different things I did with this, since the purpose of this is to show the masking, I was able to get the photo to this point. The one thing I will mention though is one change that I did make was to change the profile. And I've talked about this in previous videos. Lightroom defaults to something called Adobe Color, but it's not necessarily a good representation of what your camera intended, or your camera's manufacturer, I should say, really intended for the interpretation of that raw file. So I like to actually go in and select the camera matching. These match pretty closely to, not exact, but pretty closely to what the different scene modes in your camera are. And so in my case, I do prefer typically to go with standard. And so that is one change that I typically make to a lot of my photos. It's interesting to note that when I did that blocked area went away. So it does show that raw data is handled just a little bit differently as you select the different profiles. So coming back to here, we now have our image that's got some global adjustments. I did a little bit of cropping, and that's other than dealing with the highlights and the shadows, adding a little bit of contrast, mainly because I brought the shadows up. This is where I'm at now. So already a decent improvement, but still not really what I saw. It was close to sunset. It was probably sunset was probably in about 45 minutes to an hour after I took this photo. So let's see what the issue is with selecting the sky. So I come and select the sky. If we look down around these trees, especially the ones by the lighthouse, we can see the mask was not applied inside of the trees around the branches and that. And this is a pretty common problem when you've got trees, especially trees that are not really thick, reaching up into the sky. It did do a good job with the top of the lighthouse, and that's something that typically it has struggled with in the past, but it also did grab the side of the lighthouse as well. I'm not going to worry too much about that. I am going to make some adjustments to the lighthouse anyway, but I am really concerned about what's going on within those trees themselves. So what can we do? Well, you could take the brush tool, zoom in 200, 300%, and start going through and trying to select all those different areas. That takes a lot of time, and it's very frustrating as you tend to often make mistakes. You have to go back, delete, do things over again. So it's not a approach that I like to use unless I absolutely positively have to do it. So instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a range mask. So just come and click add, and I'm going to select luminance range. Now here I am going to zoom in. I'm going to zoom in to 100%, and that's because that's going to make it easier for me to select an area that I want to work with. And so I'm going to just put this eyedropper in this larger area in between these two trees here and click on it. And that gave me, if we look over here, it gave me a luminance range of 25 to 50 on the darker side. So 25 is where the mask starts in the feather, and then where it becomes solid is at 50. And then on the other end, where the mask is solid, ends at 70 and goes out to 95. I'm going to actually change those a little bit, and just by playing with these you can see the effect that it has, even just playing with that feather. But I'm going to actually bring the low end down to about 45, 44, somewhere in there. And we can see that did a pretty good job of actually picking that up. Is it perfect? No. Is it close enough? Absolutely. I'm probably going to make a little bit of a change on the upper side as well. I don't know that I need that much of a feather out there because I already have everything else. The bright area is already selected, so I think I'm going to bring that down to about 85, 87, somewhere in there. It's not an exact deal. And then maybe just bring this down a little bit as well. Maybe go to about 70. Yeah, 70 looks pretty good. So let's take a look. Let's go back to fit and see how that looks. So that looks pretty good, but we did introduce some other problems, and that is we did manage to select most of the lighthouse and all of the lighthouse keeper's house as well. So definitely don't want that. So I'm going to go ahead and do some subtractions. I'm going to use the object mask to do that. So if I select subtract and select objects, there's a couple different modes that this works in. But what I find is for well-defined elements in a photo, using the option where you draw a rectangle to select your subject tends to work pretty well. And I'm just going to select the base of the tower. Since it's wider down here, I'm going to start here and then work my way up. So start here, come up, and just make sure I get that whole base in there and come up to about there. And now I don't have the lighthouse. I'm not worried about the top of it. That's pretty much all black anyway. And I would definitely want to make sure that the sky is being taken care of. So I think that's fine. I'm going to do the same thing with the house. So again, select objects, and I think start about here, come down in, and select house. Oops, I did add instead of subtract, it looks like. So let me just delete that. Go ahead and subtract, select object. There, that looks better. And now the one final thing is I do have the grasses also. They're a little bit brighter. So I'm going to use intersect. And to use intersect, the easiest way, if you're on a Mac, use Option. I believe it's Alt on a PC. If you hold that down, that button changes to intersect. And I'm just going to select a linear gradient, and just down here below the tree line, and you could see, and just above where the grasses start. So probably somewhere like that. And if I toggle that on or off, you could see that there's a little bit going on there. So I'm pretty happy with that. That's going to give me a mask now that I can now work with the sky and get most of those areas in the trees. Like I said, is it perfect? No, but unless you pixel peep, you're not really going to notice. So I'm going to begin by just bringing, not by much, about 1/3 of a stop, just bringing the sky down a little bit, come down a little bit more. I'm going to bring the highlights down, bring the shadows down. It's going to add just a little bit more definition to the clouds, and actually bring the whites up. So I'm going to actually stretch those out because I did have the sun off to the right hand side, so I want to make sure that that's kind of reflected in the photo. And then just going to bring the blacks down to just add a little bit. I do like the fact that the left side is a little bit darker. There was fog rolling in. In fact, it rolled in really fast while we were there. But one of the things that I want to do is warm this up a little bit. So not too much. I mean, you can go really too far. That looks like that's, but probably to somewhere in 9-10 range, and add just a little bit of a magenta tint to it as well, to give that late afternoon feel that we had at the time. And then also add just a touch, just a touch of dehaze. Put that to 5. One of the things I see quite often is people go a little bit too far with dehaze, and so just want to make sure that that's good. One other adjustment I want to make is I do want to even out the sky a little bit. It gets a little bit too dark towards that, and to do that, I'm going to grab this eyedropper tool and just click above the lighthouse. And using this variance, which is a relatively new feature in Lightroom, moving it to the left, if I go too far, it's it'll even it out, but it's really going to look kind of odd. So I think really somewhere in here, because I do want to have that look off to the side that it is darker over there, and probably not even that far. So probably something in that range. So we can see already, if I toggle that on and off, quite a big difference. But now I need to still work on some other elements within this image as well. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select the vegetation. And Adobe really made things a lot easier when they added these landscape masks. I'm going to go and select landscape, and I'm just going to select vegetation. I could select both that and architecture. I'm going to do those separately. I'm going to go ahead, say create mask, and I've got the same kind of issue when we look in these trees of now there's parts of the sky that's selected. But the subtract feature, for whatever reason, seems to do a better job than when you're selecting the sky initially. Don't know why that is. Probably just a slightly different algorithm that's used. So let's go ahead and select sky, and we can see those trees. The definition actually looks pretty good. Again, is it perfect? No. Some of the thicker areas, but it's probably not going to be very noticeable when you make the adjustments. The next thing I need to do is I need to deal with the boardwalk as well as that little fence area in the back. I'm going to leave the fence area alone because that's already pretty bright, but I do want to do a little bit with the boardwalk. So I'm just going to grab the brush tool, add that, and just come in probably just right at this curve here and just add that in. And I think that's good. So now I can adjust this area, and I think I'm just going to bring exposure up slightly. Again, not too much. Bring up the shadows. Actually, I think maybe just drop the shadows slightly and bring up the white's kind of a nice way to balance it, and then add a little bit of warmth, go a little bit further with this than I did before, just to try to give a little bit of a golden look, and then add just a little bit of magenta. And I think that's it in terms of what I want to do for that. Maybe I'll add a little bit of texture just because of the nature of the grasses. And so now I've got that taken care of. So the last thing I need to do is work on the house and the lighthouse, although those don't look too bad as is. But I think I do want to brighten up the lighthouse at least a little bit. I think actually I'm okay with the house the way it looks. So I'm going to go ahead and create another mask. Again, come to select landscape, select architecture. And notice it's going to select some other things that I don't really want. So I will go ahead and take care of those and eliminate those from it. So go ahead and say create mask. And now I've got to just eliminate that. But I've got a bigger problem of when I look up at the top of the lighthouse, we'll notice that the sky is selected up there. So just like before, subtract, select sky. It does fix that up quite a bit. It did also deselect part of the lighthouse itself, and especially down in this area. So I don't know that that's really going to be noticeable down here, so I think I'm just going to leave that one alone. But I do want to subtract this area here because I don't want to make that any brighter. It's already really bright. So just go ahead and say subtract. Just going to use a brush. Just come in this area. Just remove that. And I'm going to do the same thing with the house over here. So just have to make just that one adjustment. And then I think we're probably pretty good here. So going to start by just bringing up the exposure a little bit, maybe not quite that much. So it is in the shade, so I think going to come down to about there. Bring the shadows up a little bit, bring the blacks down a little bit. So I get a little bit of that grittiness coming through in those white areas, which I kind of like. I think makes it a little bit more realistic. And I need to warm that up to kind of match the rest. So again, not much, just a little bit. And I think we are good with that. So now I need to decide, do I want to do something with the house? I like the overall tonality, but I think I do want to warm that up. So let's just go and let's create a new mask, and we're just going to do a select object. Where is it? There it is. Again, using the rectangle, we saw that this worked pretty well before. Go ahead and select that, and just going to add just a little bit of warmth in there. That's all I'm going to do, just to get that consistent with the rest. So probably something like that. And maybe I want to darken this area here a little bit. I don't like how bright that is. So just one more. And I'm going to do select brush, and this time do a little bit of auto mask there as well. Select in there. I think that's good. Brush down a little bit. Select in there and right there. And all I'm going to do is just bring the exposure down. Darken that area down a little bit. Highlights down, bring the whites down. Just so it just doesn't draw attention to itself, I'm going to actually desaturate it a little bit as well. So that, I think, is where I'm at. So if we look at our image here, we compare that to what we had before. quite a difference, much more dynamic. Well, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video. A little bit longer than my videos usually are, but wanted to get through all of the masking process so you can see at least how I approach it. There may be other ways to do the same thing, but it is something that I found, especially when you've got trees sticking up into the sky, Lightroom often gets confused with trying to apply the sky mask. So this is a way that I've found that works pretty well to eliminate that issue and give you a nicely selected sky to work with. If you have other ideas, please let me know what you've done. If you've got something that might be even easier, I would certainly appreciate knowing what that is. So thanks for watching. Bye.